metrics. We need to clarify our dreams. We need to spend time verifying not just this ambiguous overview of what we want our dreams to be. We've got to sit long enough to come up with a goal and a dream that causes us to become everything that God created us to become. Equal to that, it needs to be in tandem with the fulfillment of our soul being like, I'm seen. Our soul needs to be seen totally as who we are. We need to be known. Here's a crazy thing. All of us have a desire to be known, and none of us want to be seen. It's the weirdest thing. Think about it. Everybody wants to be known. Everybody wants to walk into a room feeling like they're important and that they're necessary. And then nobody wants to be seen. It's the weirdest juxtaposition. It happened, if you go back to scripture, I mean, it was part of the fall with Adam and Eve, and they were known by God, and then they didn't want to be seen by God. And it's this instinctual thing that we have as people that we as believers have got to put an end to. How do we put an end to it? Starting to link that the fulfillment of our soul, where we're fully seen, fully known, is when we're walking in faith, i.e., conviction, empathy, surrender, fearlessness, trust, love. This is when we're dangerous, is now when we link the fire, the conviction with the dream. And now I know the metrics of what will help me be successful and grow towards being the best version of me. I know what's going to make my soul come alive is when I'm clearly walking in this place. And now the in between is 100% about character and endurance. Our goals will help us shape our character to be what? Better. More like God. The person that he created us to be, that we unlearned being because of our limiting belief. Your goals should shape you into becoming the best version of you because it's rooted and grounded as a foundation of faith. Then what happens? Well, look at chapter 11. When we walk in this now, faith brings our hopes into realities. It takes our dreams and they become concrete evidence. They're reality. It becomes the foundation needed to acquire the things I long for. My conviction, what did it just say? It's the foundation needed. It's the Indiana Jones stepping stones that I need. You don't get every step. It's when you take the next step, you cause the next step, boom. You cause the next step, then what? You'll look back and you'll start to realize that that was the foundation needed. This testimony of faith is what previous generations were commended for. Check this out. Faith empowers us to see that the universe was created and beautifully coordinated. Faith moved Abel to choose a more acceptable sacrifice to God. Faith translated Enoch. Faith, conviction, opened Noah's heart to receive revelation and warnings from God about what was coming, even things that had never been seen, but he stepped out in reverent obedience. Faith, conviction, motivated Abraham to obey God's call and to leave the familiar to discover the territory he was destined to inherit from God. So he left with only a promise. I love that verse. He left with only a promise. He must have been a knower. Where are you going? I don't know. Well, does that make sense? I don't know. I think, where are you going? I don't know. Where God told me to go. With what? A promise. Do you have food? Nope. What do you have? A promise. Do you have a camel? A what? A camel. No, I don't have a camel. What do you have? I have a promise. And he, without even knowing ahead of time where he was going, he stepped out in faith. He stepped out in conviction. He lived by faith. He lived by conviction. Sarah's faith embraced God's miracle power to conceive even though she was barren. These heroes, many of them all died still clinging to their faith, not even receiving all that had been promised to them. You're like, is that the end of the story? You're like, well, I would not see that movie. That would not be the movie I would go to. We watch them do these things, and then they didn't even receive all that had been promised to them. Why would we do that? Says the person who's only looking at this much of life. I do it all the time, so please don't hear me wrong. This is convicting for me to deliver. I told God I did not want to say this tonight. Well, why would I do it if I didn't receive the full promise? I've been doing it for 10 years. Why would I keep doing it? Because you're only looking at this much of an eternal process. I get it. I do this all the time. This is like when you have a baby and the baby is up all night long and you're like, is this my life forever? And all of a sudden it starts to feel like this is your life forever. Any mom who's now watched their kid graduate knows that like, it's just a blip. You like pat them on the back. You're like, you're going to be fine. You're like, no, I'm never going to get sleep and I'm going to be wiping butts for the rest of my life. Everyone's like, no, that's actually not true, but I get that. It's not true. Why? Because we're only fixed on this. This is why we get anxious and depressed, because all we see is right here. They clung to it. Why? Because they saw beyond the horizon the fulfillment of their promises and they gladly embraced it from afar. They all lived their lives on earth as those who belonged to another realm. It's like, Julia, but if we're so spiritually minded, how are we going to do any earthly good? Precisely. That's exactly what we're going to do. If I have my way this year with our community, we will be so spiritually minded that we will actually do some insane good on the planet. We will be the wild ones. I was talking to Justin yesterday and I was like, look, if it's wild to chase your dreams and wild to buck the system and wild to do the things of God, then count me as a wild one. I will not comply. If you are a member of this group this year, we will not comply with what? Reality. Why? Because it's going to suck, team. I love you. And we're going to hope for the best and we're going to prepare for the worst. Why? Because we're just going to simply go, no, we belong to another realm. They're living their lives on earth as those who belong to another realm. What does that mean? Now, I see problems. This doesn't mean I'm like, oh, I don't see any problems now. I live in heaven. No, I actually see problems. I'm just bound and determined and destined to courageously and boldly live my life from a different level of a perspective so that I can approach this from a place of conviction. It says in verse 19, Abraham's faith made it logical to him that God could raise Isaac from the dead. Your convictions should make it logical for God to do impossible things. That would be my goal this year. I want my conviction to make the impossible seem logical with God. Faith inspired Joseph and opened his eyes to see in the future. Faith prompted the parents of Moses at his birth to hide them for 3 months. Faith enabled Moses to choose God's will. Moses preferred faith's certainty above the momentary enjoyment of sin's pleasure. Woo, just getting all up in our business. Moses preferred his conviction over what he wanted now. What I want now, I don't want to do that push-up. What I want now, I don't want to write that song. What I want now, I don't want to build that group. I don't want to have that hard conversation. Well, Moses preferred conviction's certainty. Why I love that is because that is the juxtaposition. You and I both know that it was not certain. What you're looking at ahead of you, it is not certain. It is not guaranteed. It is not, but it's saying, no, I would actually prefer conviction's certainty, faith's certainty above the momentary enjoyment of just what I want now. Fear, doubt, worry, booze, food, avoidance, busy, deflecting, all the things. I want conviction's certainty. Faith pulled down Jericho's walls. Faith provided a way of escape for Rahab. Faith sparked courage within them to become mighty warriors in battle. What am I inviting us into tonight? Conviction. Linking this idea of our conviction with our dreams and our dreams with conviction. That's ultimately where we start to bridge the gap, and then it becomes the foundation in which we make all of our steps from. So what does that mean? For now until forevermore. I'm not even going to say for the next 30 days, now for forevermore. That would look like us getting up every morning and go, all right, if I was living from a place of boldness, what would I do today? If I was living from a place of surrender, what would be my next steps here? If I was living from a place of freedom and I woke up in a year, what would be possible? And then if we thought about that from a year perspective, because here we are, New Year's, and we're like, well, for the sake of 2024, it's like, all right. And I said this in our Facebook group of like, do I have a dream? Do I have a growth plan that supports that? Do I have an horizon aligned routine? Do I have my dream stackings? And do I have my word that pulls me through the process? Because it's going to get messy and it's going to get awkward and it's going to get hard and I'm going to want to quit and I'm going to love it and I'm going to hate it. And I have to find the patient endurance to keep going and not to play small, but to actually start to partner with the promise. If you don't know your dream or your goal for the year, it doesn't make you wrong or bad, but it will be impossible to partner with the promise. Or if you have a dream, but you haven't broken it down into yearly, quarterly goals, it will make it impossible to partner with that promise. If you don't have conviction, let's say you're like, no, JG, I got my goals. I've got it all broken down, but you're like, I have not activated this conviction. Then your job now is to learn, how do you activate? How do you cause? How do you allow your soul to go, that does it. That's what's going to give you the ammunition to do the in-between with patient endurance. Yeah, but we're not there yet. Said the person who's not connected to their conviction. We'll get there. We'll get there. We get there. There's our mind blow. What is it designed to do? To kind of get us to go, oh my gosh. Either A, I wasn't thinking about it that way. B, this opens up a lot of cans of worms. C, I have no action items, depending on the point of this tonight is to go, okay, I got to think about this differently. And then the point for this next week is to marinate in it.